My name is Mick Rohr. I am at Lake Ramona in Fairfield County. In 2010, I was asked to do a senior photo shoot for a friend of mine's child, and I took the day and I did a series of pictures. At last minute, we decided to come out to this lake. I'd never been here before. I had been to Written Rock, what is right down the road, and I'd never been to this lake. I came with my wife and my 5-year-old son, and at the minute we got to the top of this hill to the lake, something was throwing rocks in the water at us. Mine said that it could be a Bigfoot, but I said the reality is it's probably just a hillbilly or something like that, or somebody messing with us, because I believe in Bigfoot. I just didn't believe in them being in Ohio. I was proven wrong. I stayed for about 15-20 minutes. We took pictures. It was still throwing rocks into the lake, and after about 15-20 minutes, the boy said, "Hey, I'm getting creeped out, I'm scared, we need to go." About that time, we all collaborated at the little hill. We all collected here, and we planned on leaving. My wife was very pregnant with my second son at that point, so I told her, I said, "We need to get you back down to the Jeep." And I didn't really throw up an alarm, but at that point in time, I was getting scared because this thing was hitting a tree, and it started snapping branches. And the rocks kept coming. So I said, before I leave, just for the heck of it, I'm going to take a bunch of pictures. I took 7 pictures. Out of those 7, I got 3 good pictures of a Bigfoot. I was up late that night, and I didn't even think about it till I got home, and I was doing retouches in Photoshop on this boy. And, because every picture needs touched up. Doing pictures, I was doing retouches, and about midnight that night, I decided to zoom in on the picture that I took of across the lake here, and I found a black figure. The thing was jet black. I had to do a lot of work in it, working Photoshop with it, but all that was done was a contrast fix and a brightening. That was it. I see a face on there, and I saw a hand holding what looks to be a femur. It's been disputed that it was a femur. It's been disputed that it was a femur or a stick, but I tend to think it's a femur, and it looks like a human femur. So that was what it was using to hit the tree. But anyway, I again found myself saying, "Hey, I don't believe I got what I got." Sat there looking at known primates, and I said, Ohio isn't supposed to have primates like this. And one thing led to another, and I decided that I got something that wasn't supposed to exist on video or on camera. I contacted the BFRO. It was the BFRO. Russ Jones got a hold of me and interviewed me about it, and I believe he said the creature was between 7 to 7.5 feet tall. He has my images. I am willing to share my images with people that are interested in it. It's the real deal. I went from skeptic to a full-on believer, especially for the Buckeye Bigfoot thing.
Do you know anything about the history of this area?
Very little. I know when I was growing up, there was talk about cold activity. We had the Written Rock there for many years. It was just graffitied up, but I'd come here and hang out with friends till midnight, 1 o'clock on occasion, and I had no idea this thing was here. I have friends that are from Amanda that I've asked them about it, and they said, "Yeah, we've known all along there's something out there." And I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I think locally they're called unis, but that I've only tripped over that term maybe on one website, but I call them a grass man. That was the thing. When we crested this little hill, there was nothing. It was an abnormally warm day for October. It was about today's temperature. It was probably 80 degrees easy, and it was dead quiet. It was like you were deaf. It was painfully quiet. And other than the movement I'd hear of that rock coming in and hitting the water, that was it. There were no trees, there were no bugs, nothing. And I've only heard that one time, and that was at my house, and I beat a path to get back in the house. But they do, I have had that happen here, and I never understood it until I experienced it.
And then you said you heard knocking on tree?
Yeah, that was right when we decided to all leave. It was hitting the tree, it was like a rapid succession of 3 knocks, and it would stop for a second, and then it would hit it again. And I said, "That's not human." I said, "It's time for us to leave." I got my kid and my wife down to the Jeep, and I said, let's go.
So what happened after the encounter? Did you talk to anyone about it?
I talked to the guy that was with me, and I said, hey, do you want to go forward with this? And he was really nonchalant about it. My wife said, yeah, I was there for it, but I was chasing a 5-year-old. I did contact John Bendernagel about it, never heard anything back from him. Jeff Meldrum took an active interest in it, and I did send him the pictures. I believe really the one that took off was the Russ Jones. And I have sent my story to a few YouTube podcasts, stuff like that. And I mean, I'm willing to talk about it. I like it. I mean, I'm glad I got something cool because I'm full on willing to share it. Today, case in point, I wouldn't say it was definitely a spike in adrenaline when I got here because I thought, what could happen? I was by myself for 10, 15 minutes and I noticed the spike of adrenaline because in retrospect, I think we could have easily been killed. I had a very pregnant wife. I had a son. I mean, the guy I was with, the older guy, he wasn't, he's an older guy, slow moving like me now, but I mean, very slow moving guy. We would have been dead. And I think of that, and I think that was an apex predator that we dealt with. It could have gone so bad, and it didn't. And I'm glad of that, but it could have gone so bad, and I'm so glad that it did. It was a really cool experience.
Since having this experience and being more open about it, have you heard of other things that have happened?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've told people I'll be anonymous. I'll respect your anonymity. You come to me about information, share it with me. I'll share with what I've got and we'll talk. But, I've never really had anybody say, hey, I don't want to be, I don't want my name out there. But on the same note, I haven't submitted them to the BFRO. I've said, hey, if you want to talk to somebody, I know people. But yeah, I've had a few people come forth with incidents. There was a case out on Thompson Ridge, I guess in the 50s, where there were two women that lived together, and Thompson Ridge isn't terribly far from where I live. There was a case of a creature that would come around these two sisters that lived together periodically and scream out their window. I've heard a case of Big Pine, which is close to where I live. There was something outside that hit the wall and it knocked dishes and stuff off of the wall on the inside. There was a man that I know of that lives out California Hollow. He said he saw one looking in his window or in his door. I'm sorry, I could be off a little bit on this, and I'm not going to use any names, obviously, but there have been encounters. There have been some odd encounters.
Has it made you hesitant to go out into the woods at all?
Absolutely, yeah. I am apprehensive now, and I live with trees behind me. So yeah, I'm always apprehensive of it. And I tell my kids, I said, hey, if there is, if you hear something outside, come and get me. Absolutely, I'm not going to laugh at you. I will not laugh at my kids ever for telling me they see something, they hear something, because that is the worst thing you can do to a child. And if they say, hey, I see something looking in the window at me, I'm going to laugh it off. I'm going to go out there with a gun, But it has opened my mind to a lot of things. A friend of mine lived here not too far from here. She would say that she would hear things in the woods. She had a small child at the time, and I told her, I said, you need to be careful because these things can take children. It's better to be safe than sorry. I said, they are an apex predator. They can, I don't want your child coming up missing. And interestingly, her son is now a big fan of Bigfoot. So her daughter, not so much, but her son is now into Bigfoot. So naturally I feed into that when I can.
Out of curiosity, the whole span of everything that happened here, when you came up and the activity started,
it was probably about 20 minutes. We were here long enough for that poor boy to get scared to death because I had him down there and we were taking pictures of the lake behind him. I was sitting on the bench taking pictures of him. This thing was over here and it was throwing rocks behind him. So he was scared to death. And I mean, his dad was standing up here looking, and he said, there's something over there and it's big. So I said, okay, we need to get going. I got my wife and son. Like I said, once it started hitting the tree and the stick started breaking, it didn't vocalize, because had it vocalized, this would have been where I die. But it didn't vocalize, and we didn't smell anything. That's the thing, we smelled nothing. But it was a very still day, but it was just so weird because part of my mind said, hey, that's a hillbilly, or that's somebody messing with us. And the other part of my mind said, that could be a Bigfoot. So I definitely was educated.
The topography of the Heartland is riddled with a mixture of fields and forests. From sprawling farmlands to thousands of acres of protected woodlands, the region is full of abundantly diverse flora. Plenty of wildlife utilize open fields mixed with protected woodlands, seeking both food and shelter from these areas. Known as an edge habitat, many animals make use of this liminal space for shelter, food, and a place to rest. Deer, for example, often bed down in areas of tall grass near thickets where they can conceal themselves, yet see approaching predators. Additionally, edge habitats create a prime location for certain plants to prosper, such as blackberries. According to the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, roadsides, thickets, barnyards, old fields, ditches, fence rows, building ledges and rooftops, vacant lots, urban areas, power line corridors, borders of streams, rivers, ponds, swamps, and lakes, and many other areas qualify as edge. When it comes to Sasquatch, it's understandable that such a creature would thrive in this type of environment, and the prominence of edge habitat sightings seems to indicate exactly that.
I would say it's probably more prominent than that I'm aware of. I know there's more sightings. Like I said, I've heard of them crossing fields and outside of the edge of forest, which I think it's just because maybe it's an open path. It's easier to traverse.
I have a friend that lives nearby here who, her and her brother were in a truck traveling where you stayed, just down from there, and in the tree line stood one of these creatures. And as they drove by it, they seen it. They didn't say anything, and they later on said, "Okay, did you see what I seen?" And yes, they both did. Neither one wanted to think that the other was crazy. So when they went back, the creature had gone. The creature seems to understand how to use a backdrop, how not to stand in the open so that it's highly visible, but how to use a backdrop and blend itself into its environment.
So we're in Hocking County, Ohio, southern Ohio. We're on a property that's 750 acres, and we are in the middle of my property. So I believe I found this in July of last year. And what's crazy about this is just down the ridge, in the line of fire, was my friend's tree stand that's facing this way. So any hunter knows you don't put a blind in front of another hunter's tree stand unless you want to get shot. Now, it being his hunting spot, he had his tree stand up on the tree, and about halfway in between where this is and his tree stand, he had a deer feeder. And we went back and looked where he had a trail camera, and one of these logs, the biggest log here, was on the ground. Well, if you look at this closely, what's really interesting is all these branches are not broke. They're bent to the point, but not to where they're broken. And all of these right here, sticks have been added to this. You can walk around, so it's like they bent bent it down, and they leaned all these sticks around it to keep the limbs down. And it's kind of ingenious because if you break a branch, the leaves die. As you can tell right now, this is going on the second year, and it still has full leaves on it, and the leaves will come back next year. So to me, it was really odd proximity to the deer feeder. There's deer corn in there, and there's a couple ravines within we're in a big ravine. Then you have these small little cutouts where you can kind of go from this portion of the ridge to the top and be undercover. There's a larger cutout just beyond this where I could get in there right now and go from here to the top of the ravine and you would never see me. So everything here just seems to be really strange. And a lot of people will automatically say, well, that was a hunter, you got a poacher. Well, first of all, there's no one out here. Second, the people that do live out here, we all own a tremendous amount of land. We don't have to go poach someone's. We all have our own land to hunt on. And there is a respect. There's a respect out here because most people have the general consensus that, if you get caught trespassing on someone's property, you might get shot. And just very strange that this popped up. I found another one of these almost exactly like this about 45 minutes from here on the backside of another ridge. So this is just one of the examples of stuff that happens on a property that kind of pops up overnight. And my thoughts for this is not that it's a shelter, but probably 8 adults could get in there and at least be obscured from view. Maybe something's watching that deer feeder. Maybe someone wants to hunt because it's also attracting deer. Or this is just a good vantage point to maybe get in there, look through there and see if I'm out on the deck across the pond. And this is one of the areas, this ridge that we're on right now, historically, when things come through the area, that first tree knot comes from right in this ridge.
They're very emotionless. They will stand in the tree line and just watch you. And those 2 instances were a result of us gifting them and them responding to that gifting. In fact, in this particular location, the landowners didn't even know they had Sasquatch, and they were raising meat rabbits at the time and throwing the carcasses and all the innards out in a big pile, and then all of a sudden Sasquatch started showing up. So then I went to the location where the spot where all the carcasses were. I left a big pile of carrots because I was at the West Virginia Bigfoot Museum and talking to them, and they're like, oh, they love carrots. So I came back here, gifted a big pile of carrots the next day. We got the picture, we got the video, the one smacking the wood down. So they're more apt to be like, hey, we like what you're doing, thank you for the gifting, we're here, and they'll show themselves because they want more food.
Those are very common reports because Sasquatches in general are going to be close to the edge line because all the animals that graze in the fields on the edges are going to be there too, coming and going. And typically where those usually take place are where the game trails come in and out of the wood line. So the Sasquatches are watching those game trails, and a lot of times at night they'll sit there and just wait for an animal that doesn't know what's going on to come through and go by so they can grab them real easily. But typical reports, especially like in east, central, and southern Ohio, are going to be the ones where they see them usually on an edge of a field, and then the Bigfoot will start retreating and go into and disappear into the wood line on the wood edge. But just like any other kind of animal, they're going to use the least path of resistance when it's made available. So if that open meadow's there, they're going to do it. If the power line cut is coming through, they're going to follow those power line cuts. I know, like over in Woodbury and Coshocton, we got a recording once going up a power line where we knew there were historical sightings, and And there was no video of a Bigfoot, but put it this way, you could hear coming up the hill, crunch, 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 and over time it got closer, closer, and it literally walked right past the white pine we had the recorder set in, walked right by it. You hear plain as day footfalls, definitely something on two legs. Okay, so it could be a person, but here's the thing, it was 3:54 in the morning, nearest house is 2 miles away. Okay, so yeah, they decided to go for a walk and just decided to walk through the tick-infested, area like that. Okay, and then within 15 seconds of it clearing and started going in the distance, 2 clear wood knot. I don't know. But no, it's common. Okay, those are pretty much your typical, other than the road crossers, the seeing them in the edge of the field and then retreating in the woods is your atypical sighting. I think you get more of those than actually in the woods.
One might assume that the typical Sasquatch sighting consists of a roadside encounter. And that would be correct. A driver on their daily trek happens across an unsuspecting creature standing on the roadside, or perhaps crests a hill just in time to see a Bigfoot finishing its stride across the roadway. This is far and away the most common form of sighting. However, a close second seems to be the sightings right on the edges of fields and forests. Some sightings even tend to be a mixture of both. Around the year 2000, a woman and her friend were traveling by car in Oscoda County, Michigan, when the eyewitness had a split-second observation of a 10-foot-tall dark figure crossing the road and entering the tree line. Coming around a curve in the road, the woman saw a figure that, by her reckoning, would blow away a WWE wrestler in terms of its build. Its shoulders stayed level as it slipped into the tree line and vanished from view. Reflecting on the incident, the witness reported that the massive creature was heading in the direction of protected state wetlands.
A lot of those. I mean, that's very common. I would say that's almost the second most common besides a road crossing. I would say road crossing is number one. The second is them standing in the tree line watching you, and you see it either going in or out or standing there. I got a great one. This gentleman was 80 years old in Kentucky, Logan County. He called in a little talk radio show. My partner, Don Neal, he's an ordained minister. He hunts Bigfoot by day or by night and preaches the gospel by day. If I got it backwards. But anyway, Daniel was doing the radio show. The guy called in the radio show and said, I was in my backyard. It was around dusk. I was working my garden. I look over the fence and standing in the tree line was this Bigfoot. And this sweet old man, I tell people this again, you don't know what witnesses will do. Guess what he does? He tries to talk to it. He says to it, it's okay, I won't hurt you, come on over. Who does that? So he says it again, it's all right, come on. So finally, he figured the rake he was holding in his hand might have been scaring it. He laid the rake down. For a third time, he said, it's all right, you could come over. The Bigfoot walked out of the tree line over a 3-foot fence, 20 feet from him, kind of downhill, but they're eye to eye. It was gray, arms down past his knees, wide hooded nose, which is what I get a lot. Hooded nose like a human, thin lips, black face, big black eyes, no whites of the eyes, which is common. The weirdest thing he said, the bangs look cut. Like, why would you add that if you're making that story up, that the bangs look cut? It's just kind of a weird thing to add, but he said the bangs look straight across the forehead. We stood there. I realized it's time to go in the house. So he turned around, went in the house, looked back, the Bigfoot's walking away. So he went inside, took 2 potatoes from his garden, opened his back door, put the potatoes on the railing of his deck. Before he went to bed, he looked out there, the potatoes were gone. Yeah, a raccoon could have taken them, but we like to think there's a relationship there. There was a mutual respect there. He tried to talk to it. I don't think they know what you're saying. I think they know your intent. A dog knows your intent, right? These things are much smarter than a dog. So whenever I tell people, if you see one, try to talk to it. Even palms up, be submissive, maybe look down, let them know you come in peace, they might stick around. You know, you never know. So this sweet old man, his report, of course, is on my website, and I share that report a lot in some of my presentations. I even have a sketch. Terry Thomas is an artist in an organization. He drew a sketch of this Bigfoot and the old man because it's a sweet story.
Another story that just happened, they just like to watch us. They're fascinated by us like we are by them. And then you throw children into the mix. I've heard of stories of them coming to the tree line watching playgrounds as well.
If you know me, I am interested in whether there could be a living, breathing, normal animal out there, right? Some type of a primate. So that's where my interest is in most of my research. But there are also a lot of stories that don't kind of go into that. And I always keep an open mind on it. And I want to hear everything because a lot of science, we just don't know how it works yet, right? So one time I was actually taking a report for another Bigfoot researcher who couldn't get out to this area in Ohio. And I went there and met a gentleman who took myself, and Lester came with me to that one, and we went out on side-by-sides. I think I called them 4x4s before. Side-by-sides. We went out, and it was wintertime. And so we went through the woods on his property and got to this big field that was smack in the middle of the woods that he hired somebody to take care of, and they got to keep the crop. So he and his wife were both there in their beagle, which is important. And they get to this side of that field, and on the other side, across it, were thick woods. And we pull up, you know, because he's showing us in real time kind of what had happened. And they had seen something walking along the tree line on the other side of that field that seemed to be kind of changing colors almost. Like, not like, from what I remember, it wasn't necessarily like drastic changes, but, you know, it was changing, and it was humanoid in form, and it was Sasquatch looking to both of them. And they kind of went a little bit further into the field from what I remember, and didn't go all the way over there while it was there, and it disappeared into the tree line. You know, we talked for a while, and I don't know if something unusual was going on or if it was just the light hitting the fur. You know, it had been wintertime and, you know, coming off the snow. I'm not sure, but it was a cool story, and one that I still wonder exactly what they were seeing.
Right. Well, I think it, like I said, it's about ease of access. Like I also wonder, like we did have what might have been, understand that, a nesting situation that we found in an open field. And it was actually, everything was compressed down like a deer would do it, except it was 10 foot. It was 10 foot across in each direction. It wasn't a group of deer laying down. This was like one big imprint. And the way we took it because we looked for hair, we looked for everything. The way we took it was that whatever it was had been laying down there and had actually been, because where it's at, the weeds were so tall you couldn't actually see. So like see anything from, like it could see from there, but you couldn't see it from any distance. Like if you were a football field away, especially, you would never even know it was there at all. Like, and so I think that's what it possibly was doing. And the thing that makes us think that is what it was, we did have rocks thrown at us at that incident, which nothing huge, but, you know, small rocks. And the one guy in our group thought it was me doing it. I'm like, it isn't me, man, you know. I think they can use it for bedding. I think they can use it just as an easy access to cut from one area to another instead of walking up and down ravines and things. You know, the shortest distance between two paths is a straight line. So I figure that's maybe why they do what they do. But that goes back to farmlands. There's so much farmland here, you know, that they don't have a choice at certain points. They're going to have to cross an open field or even roads, which I also think is another story why they do cross roads, and you hear about that.
Just name a county. I mean, even where I live, in Lorain County, like in Columbia Station, way back in the day, there was an abandoned railroad line, and a lot of the kids from high school, my uncle one of them, they would get on those, the teeter-totter rail cars where two people would be on and going up and down to go down the tracks. Well, Bob and one of his buddies, and this would have been in the 1960s, was going down this rail car and came upon this open field, and there was corn in the open field, but it was only about half height. And he says, as we came along there, he says, we hear all this commotion to our right, so we both look, it's funny because I remember what Bob said. He goes, first we thought it was what are the rail police called? There's a name for them. They police the rail tracks. I can't think what he called it, because they would do that. You get in trouble because if you were caught on the railroad track. And the Bigfoot stood up, and it was, even though it was just starting to get light, this was about 5:45 in the morning, it was starting to get light. So they came upon there, and the Bigfoot must have not heard them coming or something, because it was in the cornfield. Then it stood up and turned and looked at them and took off across the cornfield, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was just right there, and they watched it walk away for a good 30 seconds, and that was like in the 60s. But typically just about anywhere. A lot of the sightings in Coshocton County are on edges. Even walking down the dirt roads, road edge into the woods. Obviously, some of the famous ones in Woodbury were typically walking along fence lines, down on the edge lines and things like that. And like I say, they're always going to use the easiest path. If they can use the easiest path, that's what they're going to do. I think of the times I'm in the woods doing surveys and stuff that, sometimes this wood's so thick. I got caught in a couple places recently in rainstorms. With trees down everywhere. You'd be surprised, why they choose to go the edge line.
There are a number of reasons that an animal may opt to stay just on the edge of fields and forests. Aside from access to food and shelter, there are other appealing aspects to this unique geographic area referred to as edge habitat. It provides some means of concealment. It can allow for a quick getaway if spotted. It allows for a creature to observe those out in the open while remaining hidden. Above all else, it can be the best route of travel from point A to point B. For example, we sometimes see Sasquatch utilizing clear cuts for travel, as they can remain right on the edge of the tree line with easy access to conceal themselves should they be disturbed. Small Town Monsters founder Seth Breedlove had a clear-cut sighting of this nature, as documented in the Bigfoot Project web series, which took place near Minerva, Ohio. Within a matter of seconds, he saw a 6 to 7 foot reddish-brown figure sprinting into the woods, recalling especially the shape of the arm and the hair that trailed after it.
Safety, to remain hidden. There's not many reports of them just standing in an open field. So whenever they can, they stay in cover. If they do cross the field, it's pretty quick. The Memorial Day footage, a lot of us believe that's a Bigfoot running across those campers filmed, and it was running. I don't think they take a lot of risk if they don't have to.
Absolutely to not be seen, to not fall prey, to be unobservable is to be safe and to keep yourself alive.
I think one of the reasons that you might have a possible Bigfoot sighting at the edge of a forest is for the same reason that often you will have deer on the edges of forests. As the light is either coming up or going away, that's an area where animals will kind of gravitate toward, because if it's too bright, they don't want to be in the middle of the field. And as it's getting darker, they're moving toward the middle of a field, because they don't mind, deer, for instance, don't mind being in the middle of a field if it's dark, because they feel protected. In the middle of the day, if they go out to the middle of a field, they're vulnerable. Anything is going to feel that way. Now, a person walking in the middle of the field, we don't care. We're apex predators, so we can go out walking in the middle of a field. It doesn't matter. We don't have something that could conceivably attack us. But an animal that is wary is going to hang out near the edges as dawn and dusk arrives. And so it stands to reason that an animal that wants to be elusive, or an intelligent creature that is elusive, would do the same thing. Also, if, let's say, my food source were a deer, I'm going to put myself where the deer are, which at varying times is going to be near the edge of a field. What it also does is it allows me vision. I can see out, but behind me, my silhouette is going to be broken up by the trees. And so it's much easier for me to sit there and see what's going on here. And so from a hunting perspective, one of the things that you do if you're hunting a field, you can put yourself right on the trees right next to the field. But what I do is I put myself one tree back. And so anything that's in the field, if they look, they're not going to see me, but I can see them. And I'm only blocked by a couple of trees, but I am much more likely to see them before they see me. And so that might be a reason why you get sightings near the edges of a wood line. Also, you have to take into consideration, you're not going to have a sighting in pitch blackness in a field, more than likely, because it's dark. And so you're going to get a sighting as light is coming or light is going, and that's where I would be.
I think there's lots of reasons why animals would walk along a tree line. You have an easier way of travel, so I know I want to take the easy way if I can. So, they can get from point A to point B easier. That's why we call, power line cuts Bigfoot highways sometimes, because you have that break in the trees. So that would be number one. Number two would be fast access to shelter or to a place where they can hide or get away. So, if they're just out in the open and they feel threatened, they don't have anywhere to go. On a tree line, you have somewhere to go quickly. And the third reason I can think of is that you have like a whole different ecology, like right on the tree line. You have different plants that grow there. You have different animals that live in what we call the edges of the forests. So wherever you have a spot where one type of terrain, or whatever you want to call it, ends and another one begins. So you have the farmland, you have a field, you have just grass or whatever you want to call it. And then all of a sudden there's trees and bushes and plants. Everything changes, even to the insects that are there. So my thought would be that Sasquatch would come along and be looking for food there as well, besides just a way of traveling and a way of getting quick cover.
The great thing with Ohio is we have gas lines, telephone lines, power lines, and now fracking lines. So those are their highways. So if you're going to want to find a place where you think Bigfoots are coming and going, say, from one area to another, you want to find those locations. You want to find, like, by the highways where the creek beds go under the highways and there's a way to go under. Those are places to look. That's the logic. If you're going to set game cameras up, those are the places to do it. Because if you know they're in Salt Fork, but you also know they're in Wills Creek, there is a couple underpasses where creeks large enough where something 10 foot tall can go under the highway and not have to cross.
Any sort of sighting that takes place near a distinct physical marker, such as a certain tree, a fence, or even a sign, gives researchers the opportunity for a more in-depth investigation after the fact. From being able to assess the height of the creature that was seen by measuring known factors, to assessing how large a stride may be based on the distance covered in a matter of seconds, having a notable geographic or physical feature for reference can help determine a number of aspects about the creature. A report taken near Zanesville, Ohio in July of 2003 illustrates the point. A woman on her back patio watched as a tall, dark-colored Bigfoot walked past their shelter and barn. It was the same height as their electric bug zapper, which was mounted to the barn, and this detail enabled investigators to determine that the eyewitness was 93 feet away at the time of the incident, and that the noiseless, long-armed creature was 6 foot 7 inches tall. Another case from Kentucky provides a similar comparison. In August of 2007, a couple was out four-wheeling in a creek when the young woman happened to see a tall, furry figure towering over a stand of cane weeds. The eyewitness, who declared her own height as 5 foot 3 inches, estimated that the weeds were 2 feet taller than she was, and the mystery primate eclipsed the weeds by 2 feet, allowing her to observe slightly pointed ears and large, muscular shoulders.
If you have a reference point, a Bigfoot standing by a tree or a branch, you can go back and measure it. I will tell you this, so many witnesses are off on distance and height and weight. A lot of us don't play golf for a living. You know, a golfer can tell you, oh, it was 120 yards. When we go back and we do these measurements, usually the Bigfoot's much bigger. Sometimes it's further away even than what they estimate. So yeah, it gives us a good reference point if they're standing by something like a tree.
I think you can, and I think that, you know, what's called aerial sign in tracking, branches that are broken, the possibility of hair being caught or follicles being caught high up, and yeah, definitely the measurement of height. If a person can be calm enough to look and to see a comparison of what the creature is standing next to, I think that's kind of hard for a lot of people that might not be used to being in the woods.
Oh, yeah. And then you can get a reference point for how tall this one was, and then you can possibly track them and see where they went. Yeah, they're really the best.
One of the things that you can do is, if you know where a figure is located, you can then use a known object that is measurable to see how tall a creature is, how wide a creature is. You can even figure out how fast it is moving based on it getting from point A to point B with a known object, which is fascinating to do.
Sightings that are along tree lines or anywhere where there's an object that's not going to change too quickly. So if you're talking about, I saw a Bigfoot back in 1984 and it was standing by this tree, it might be a lot harder to do. But if somebody says, I saw one a month ago, last week, even a year ago, and here it was, I've used that before. I've gone out and I've asked the person to stand where the Bigfoot was standing, and then you kind of try to get them to tell you how big they thought it was. I've done that before with my own possible sightings. So it's very, very good to have some type of a fixed object to go off of when you're trying to at least get size proportions out of there, and to go back to the correct spot. If you're going to go out and look for footprints where somebody said they just saw a Sasquatch, if they can give you more details about exactly where it was, and trees and things like that can help with that, then it's all good for research.
Are there any particular physical behaviors, postures, or activities associated with woodline sightings?
For me and the reports that I've taken, it's usually along the woodline, it's usually been a Bigfoot in motion. So my own possible sighting at Meander Reservoir back in 2012, the creature was just standing there holding onto a tree. So it moved, but it wasn't like walking. But I would say when it's been a tree line sighting that I've taken, they were moving along that area. Now, I've read about other people's sightings where they will be in there kind of standing. When I was out in Montana, the Blackfoot tribal members that had us out there, they talked about how not far from the tree line, like if you go back maybe like 20 feet or so, sometimes you'll find like brush that has been put together that they feel The hairy man will use as cover to kind of spy on people outside of that tree line. So I don't know, but that's really interesting.
I think it helps because like you can find at least indentations in the grass a lot easier than you can on leaves. Like, and a lot of times when you get in leaf litter inside of the woods, it's hard to track. But if you can at least find indentations where they're stepping, where they're sitting, where they're laying, that kind of thing. And I think depending too, like with a lot of if it's farmland, you know, when they cut down everything and they're watering things, you might be able to catch footprints better.
Well, yeah, because you have unit of scale. If they're walking by a line of, say, oak trees growing there, and you know, the person says, well, that branch over there, or see the knob up there, it was halfway up to that knob on that hickory tree over there. Well, now you can get out there and run your tape up. Hey, that's 8.5 feet off the ground, you know, and then you look like, for example, like my personal sighting that I know we've talked about. That branch hit right off the top of its head. So that gave us a unit the following week to measure up to get to 8'11". So we kind of knew. So yes, when you have something of scale, even the fence posts, they're 48-inch standard. So even if it has some dirt, it's 42. Still, you have a unit to use as comparison.
Witnesses have reported some similarities when spotting a Sasquatch near a tree line. One consistently reported behavior is a distinctive swaying motion employed by a Bigfoot standing behind a tree for the presumed purpose of stealing glances in a somewhat stealthy fashion. Other times they are known to just freeze in place, particularly if they feel they've been spotted, in an attempt to evade detection and blend into their surroundings. Other times they retreat into the tree line, away from an open area, quickly escaping view. In regions throughout the Heartland, there are multiple reports of these creatures being seen heading to the edge of fields and forests as they go about their normal routine, completely disregarding any potential witnesses. In October of 2015, a mother and daughter were driving near Salem, Ohio in Columbiana County when they were stunned to both witness a Sasquatch with long, shaggy brown hair cross the road in front of their vehicle. The mother, who was driving at the time, mentioned that the creature never looked at her, but took the road in 2 steps and was gone into the woods near a residential driveway. Both eyewitnesses noted that the figure was very thin, and a follow-up investigation conducted by Amy Boo revealed that the creature stood approximately 7 feet 6 inches in height. It also seems likely that Sasquatch engage in discernible hunting behaviors, at times using edge habitat to their advantage. A Michigan man and his 11-year-old grandson were out hunting deer in Manistee County in November 2009 when they nearly had a run-in with Bigfoot. Having decided to call it a day, the two were walking back to their truck when a 6-point buck ran within 20 feet of the hunters. To their astonishment, a Sasquatch was hot on the heels of the buck, with arms outstretched, ready to grab its prey. When it saw the hunters, it appeared to be surprised in its own right and crossed a clear-cut field before entering a jack pine plantation. Both witnesses described the creature as 8 feet tall, light black skin on the face, with black to brown medium-length hair on its body. The encounter lasted for roughly 11 seconds before the figure was obscured from their vision.
It's the watching. It's them being fascinated with us or asking for more food, and you have to be careful with gifting. You don't want them to get dependent. But yeah, they're wanting to watch us, or they want something from us.
So you say they're curious.
Very curious, whether it be humans. I think they're more fascinated by us because we're like them, but then they're also fascinated by, farm animals.
The one thing that we've noticed here is definitely the tree knocks, the location of other creatures, the whooping sounds. I've heard songbirds at 2 o'clock in the morning, whistling, And it seems to be nothing more than communication between these creatures to let each other know what each other's doing. They seem to have an understanding that we don't have.
The swaying, you get that a lot. It was swaying. It was by the tree swaying, holding on to the tree. A lot of times they like to put their arm around the tree. I think you told me that once, Jay, about the tree giving you energy. You become one with the tree. Maybe the Bigfoot is using that energy, or maybe it's just holding itself. I don't know why, but you do get the arm around the tree and you do get the swaying back and forth. I think it's more a nervousness, maybe anxious, kind of like I don't know. I don't know what that is, because you would think they wouldn't do that. It brings attention to you. Most Bigfoots can remain still, you never see it. I've had so many people, or I've even done it, where I was with a guy, it was middle of winter, he had a bright blue jacket on, doing tree knocks and getting knocks back, like immediate knocks back. Oh my gosh, I want to see it. So I walk away from him on the trail, going into the woods, and I'm looking down at this holler, and I'm like, where are you? I got to see this Bigfoot. Then I did a whoop, nothing. So finally, after a couple good return knocks, but nothing to my whoop, I come back. I don't see my buddy. He was right on the trail. I'm only like 30, 40 yards in the woods, and it's winter. There's not a lot of leaves. He was standing there with a bright blue jacket on. I could not see him because he was motionless. And it wasn't until I got closer, then I saw him. Movement gives away animals. If an animal remains still, typically you walk right by it. You won't even know it's there. So I think it's a mystery why they would do that, because it would kind of give away their location. But maybe they're not that smart.
I think if anything, the typical habit or behavior that I notice, they're always on a mission. So when they leave the comfort of the woods or the security, they're going from point A to point B for a reason, and their thing is to take that beeline or their least path of resistance to it. They don't seem to go off like Hilter or, let's just sit down and lounge, anything like that. I mean, I remember the last sighting that I remember over down by Salt Fork. It was a hunter. He happened to just pull off the road by the guardrail, and all he was doing is readjusting his load in the back, happened to just look over in the field below, and there was a Bigfoot walking up like this, like at an angle, and he was, of course, like looking at first, who's that hunter? Pulls out his binoculars and looks, realizes it's this big thing and its arms are swinging. He said it never turned and looked toward him. He said it looked like a man on a mission, like it was going from the bottom where it must have came out. There was a creek down there, and it was make his way, hit the tree line, went right in the woods and gone, just like that. I mean, so they definitely, when they get out where they're exposed, they go straight for where they're planning on going, because they know what they're doing. They have a reason and a purpose. It's kind of like the areas where you get the same road crossing. Like there's a place in Coshocton over by the near old Conesville power plant where we documented 3 sightings over 15 years where it crossed at the same spot, coming out of the same creek side, going the same exact way. So because that's just the easy way to go. So they're going to use it.
The place, Pike County, Ohio. The time, June, in the early 20-teens, in mid-afternoon. A man driving the backwoods stops his vehicle, exits his car, walks to the top of a hill. Looking down the gravel road, his eye scans past what looked like a decaying tree stump, until said object turned and began walking toward the tree line. The creature stood 7 feet tall, was very stout, and had hair the color of burnt charcoal. Despite its massive weight, it moved with fluidity as it was enveloped by the surrounding woods, perfectly camouflaged by its environment. We human beings like to think we know what we're looking at, especially in places like edge habitat. After all, we're familiar with those places. The fields and farm roads, ditches and bridges are all places we travel regularly, if not frequently. Be that as it may, it seems that there are things that inhabit the same edge areas that are not only experts at evading our notice, but also can hide in plain sight. Those who are able to accept that possibility may never look at America's heartland the same way ever again.
My name is Del Feuston, or Cordell Feuston. We're in Polksville, Kentucky, where I was born and raised. Well, technically I was born in Moorhead up the road there where we just came from. But Polksville, Kentucky, behind me is Polksville Cemetery, where a lot of my family's buried. And behind you is the forest where I grew up hunting deer, squirrel, rabbits, and turkey. It was October, it's the beginning of bow season in Kentucky. At least at that time, bow season started October 1, so I know it was early October. Everything hadn't fully changed over yet, but we were definitely in the midst of it. Behind us, there's a pipeline, and we had some logging roads. I grew up logging lumber as well. And on the other side of the backside of our property, there's a pine thicket, which we'll see in a bit, and a ridge, and the deer would come down the ridge to actually go into the thicket to bed down. So I knew this. And we had some of the area cleared out from logging, and there was a treetop, and I built my ground blind in the treetop. And then I got head to toe in camouflage. And then basically you could only see my eyeballs essentially. Did all the scent covers that we do here locally. Like a lot of hunters will like to actually step in cow manure because the deer will actually run in with herds of cows. Something I picked up young age hunting. And so I did that. I had my other cover scents, got to my ground blind before daybreak, sat there all day, nothing. Then probably 5, 6 o'clock or so, I hear the deer coming, and they come down the hill, and they're just running all sporadic, tails up, obviously spooked, not in a straight line, probably 8 or 9 of them if I had to guess. It was chaos. I couldn't draw on them. And then October isn't really rut season, the breeding season. It's a little early, but I thought maybe a buck was running them anyway, so I waited. And a few seconds later, I hear this loud noise, and this giant black hairy creature, upright, runs right behind them, right past me. It hits like a rotten tree with its shoulder. The tree falls over. It's not a big tree, it's a smaller tree, and then goes into the pines right behind the deer. And so like I was like, okay, it didn't see me. I don't know what that was. My only reference for Bigfoot at that time was Harry and the Hendersons and something that lives in Oregon, right? So it wasn't like something I was registering like that's a Bigfoot. I was just like, what was that? And I'm 14 at the time, and I'm just like, okay, it didn't see me. And then I realized it's about to get dark soon. So then I run as fast as I can up the logging trail, cross the pipeline. Instead of going down the other logging trail, which is the opposite side of our farm property, I cut just through the woods. There's a single strand of old rusty barbed wire that I didn't know was there, and I just hit it chest level. Actually, I have a little scar right here from it. Flip, break off the quiver off my bow, keep running, run all the way home through the barn lot, get inside, take my boots off, sit down at the kitchen table. Mom's making dinner. And she says, "You all right? You sound like you're out of breath." And I said, "I think I saw Bigfoot." And her only response to why she was chopping the vegetables was, "Yeah, they've been seen around here." And that's the whole thing. And I was just like, what do you mean? I've been hunting and fishing this area since, I was 8 years old on my own. So to have that encounter, you see a lot of strange things. And I've had close-ups with bobcats and other, obviously snakes and all that stuff. So this was the only thing that really was so unsettling to me. So that's pretty much the whole encounter. And then after that, like, it just kind of was like, okay, there's more to this than I thought.
First of all, what year was this?
So that would be 94. Didn't talk about it, obviously, because you're crazy if you say it. Now it's a little bit more socially acceptable to talk about.
Just for reference, how close are we to Daniel Boone National Forest?
Very close. Very close. Actually, if you go over this pipeline and you cut probably 2 miles that way, you'll butt up against it. Essentially, we are in the Daniel Boone right now.